welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition. And this week it comes from Tom Phillips, a Brighton podcast. So the Seagulls are the visitors to St James's Park on Sunday in the FA Cup with a place in the quarterfinals up for grabs. Tom, welcome back to the podcast. How are you keeping? Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I would have been in slightly better spirits if Newcastle actually managed to do anything at Anfield against Liverpool, but not too many teams do, so maybe I'm overreacting slightly. You guys have had a good week or two, though?
Yeah, we've had a good couple of weeks with a double over Chelsea, which is slowly becoming almost like a makeshift rivalry at the moment within our fan base. So getting the double over them, both at home as well, is be nice pickings. And one of them obviously setting up the tie for this weekend with you guys as well for a nice trip up the northeast. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, indeed. Is it slightly because usually when you ask about the FA Cup and maybe if you're a team in mid-table who've got no worries about relegation, but Europe's just a little bit far away. This is kind of the game. This is where your season rests upon. But I guess with Brighton, because the form has picked up in recent weeks, I think it's 3 wins on the bounce in the league, and European spot is right there within reach. Does it become a little bit more of a difficult question to answer about what is the priority? Like, is Sunday the priority over the Premier League?
Do you know what? I think if you ask me that after the Forest match, it's just like we'll take anything and everything. And now you've asked me that, it's just I think we're just going through dare I say the cliche? We're going through a transition season really under Hertzler. We're finding our feet under him. We've recruited massively in the summer, and a lot of our players are gelling. We've dealt with probably. I think we have combined the worst injury hit list in the Premier League, and we're still finding ourselves in the top half of the table, and we're finding ourselves in the conversation of potentially being in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. So I think we're just taking it in our stride really, and we'll just see how far this goes. That we've got a manager who is very young but has plenty of experience, which is quite surprising when you talk about someone who's 32 and has a lot of coaching experience behind them. So we really seem to be finding our feet right now at the moment, managing with what we've got at our disposal, and we're finally getting results where we haven't really been playing well. And you can see that with Bournemouth midweek.
And I guess the question of how important the FA Cup is to Brighton, when you get this stage of the competition, it's a bit of a daft question, isn't it? You're a game away from a quarters, you're just a few games away from the final. I mean, the FA Cup has to be important, right, to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I love the FA Cup. I'm such a purist in that matter, where I find the FA Cup such a thrilling fixture, and the whole weekend dedicated to it is just it's just fantastic to see, and all the twists, the turns, the cup sets. It's just part of the magic of the cup, and we always talk about and rant about it. I think now when you look at who's there, it's very much a case of anyone can win this. I think City have the luck of the draw, classic, with Plymouth. United are there for the taking. Fulham are there for the taking. And I honestly think that whoever wins this match has a very, very good chance of being in the final. And I'll go so far as to say whoever wins this is going to be one of the finalists, because I think Villa are on a bit of a spiral at the moment. I think whenever we have the key players, respectively from both teams, whenever you have that solid spine in place, you're going to get a really good game with good 90 minutes. And I think in cup games as well, it's very gong how you've got to go all in or nothing. It's all or nothing. So I really do think that whoever wins this has a very, very good chance of being at least one of the finalists in the FA Cup this season.
That is a bold prediction, but I can see where you're coming from. In terms of Brighton's starting 11 for Sunday, I had a little look back at the last round against Chelsea, and you played quite a few of your first team members, and I'm assuming you're one round ahead of that. You're going to do the same, if not fill the team with even more first team members this time around.
Yeah, I think Hertzler's got the taste for potentially a trip to Wembley in 2 games' time in the semi-finals. I think he can see how much the competition means within this country, and I think he's definitely not going to set it back or anything like that. We've seen how we did against Chelsea, like you've seen. We've definitely tried to rotate as much as we can over the last week or two, and now I think even with the injuries that we've got, we definitely should go in as much of a full strength side as we possibly can. I think when you're at this stage of the FA Cup and when you have this inkling of like no Liverpool, no Chelsea, no Arsenal, you've really got to have that meeting in the dressing room and go, we've got a very, very good chance. We've got to take it. And I think that's exactly what Hertz is going to do.
Newcastle have got a horrible record against Brighton of late. They've already lost 1-0 at St James's Park this season. They've won just 2 of the last 15 meetings with Brighton in all competitions, drawn 7 and lost 6. I mean, if you're Brighton, I mean, I don't know how much you pay attention to stats and history, but you'll be looking at the record. And even though you're coming all this way up to St James's Park, which can be a cauldron for some visiting sides, you must be feeling quietly confident, right?
Yeah, I think if you look at just the head-to-head record that we've got in the FA Cup with you guys, you know, there's memories of Will Buckley, the Newcastle boyhood fan, winning it for us in the dying embers of the match. I think he'd done that back to back as well in the FA Cups, under different managers. So, you know, that there's secretly that kind of that sense of nostalgia and that belief, like, yeah, we've got this. We could definitely take this under our wing. But I've seen how high we've gone and how low we've gone. I mean, Forest 7-0 is still fresh in a lot of our minds, despite the fact we've clawed back the goal difference and got, like I said, got back-to-back wins against Chelsea, which I know a lot of fans will be jubilant over still. So yeah, it's just about keeping our feet firmly on the ground at the moment. But I really do go into this and think, I really do fancy this. And I think that's something you get out of the FA Cup. You want to get a result. You want to get a little of a twist of a turn in it. And it's just part of the romance of the beautiful game, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. I'm a big fan of the FA Cup, but I just feel it's come for Newcastle maybe at the wrong time. Obviously, with the League Cup final a couple of weeks away, come into this game on the back of a disappointing performance down at Liverpool. And over the last few weeks, they've not been brilliant. I mean, you have to really go back to the Arsenal game where they were the usual selves, shall we say. So I'm not really too sure what to expect from this one. It does feel in many ways like a must win. Obviously, that sounds daft because if you lose, you're out of the competition. So it's a must win in terms of staying in the competition, but just a must win, I think, as well, for the positive impact it could have on not only the League Cup, but also the race for Europe as well, in terms of building that momentum and breeding that kind of winning mentality and that confidence going into what is a really important few weeks for Newcastle United. We should have some players back that will hopefully make a difference. The likes of Joe Linton, the likes of Sven Botman, will hopefully be fit and ready to start this game. If they're going to have any impact on the League Cup final, you would imagine they'll get minutes on Sunday in the FA Cup. Is there anyone in particular that you are fearing from Newcastle United point of view? Obviously, it looks like Alexander Isak might be a bit hit and miss for this game. He may not make it. So we'll discount him because everyone chooses him anyway. Is there anyone else that you're looking at and thinking, oh, I don't fancy him today?
I think you've taken the main guy out, but I think the other guy I'm worried about more is probably Anthony Gordon. He's a very tricky winger, but he's also got that ability to, when he cuts in, he can do all the duties that similarly to what I wouldn't say what Isak can, because I think Isak is verging on being a world-class player at the moment. He's very much there. And I don't say that lightly because I'm very much like Sir Alex. There's only a handful of people that I define as world-class. And I think Isak is very, very much on the right trajectory there. But I think Gordon just has that bit where he could be a winger. He could be an inverted winger, an inside forwards, and someone to complement the number 9, almost like a Dennis Bergkamp at times as well. And I think with his pace, we've seen Tariq Lamptey get caught out quite a few times with Semenyo against Bournemouth. And even though Lamptey's got the pace, I think he's still lost a yard with all the hamstring injuries that he's had. I think he's going to be in for a tough shift. So I think if Isak is going to be hit and miss and he's not going to be there, I think the guy who's going to really step up to the mark will be Anthony Gordon. And I think he's going to be someone that's going to relish that challenge. And I think if he can find an opening with Lamptey early on, it's all of a sudden it's going to be a game of cat and mouse between those two, and there's only ever going to be one winner in that race, I think. So I think in the first 10 minutes, if Anthony Gordon could get the upper hand on Tariq Lamptey, I think it's going to be a case of Brighton have gone mountain to climb, even when it's 0-0.
I wish I hadn't have said that, because the chaps who did the Man City preview and the Liverpool view from the opposition as well both highlighted the fact that Anthony Gordon should get the better of their fullbacks, and Anthony Gordon must have heard it and thought, I'm not being told what to do, and didn't turn up for any of the games. So he'll probably do the same again on Sunday if he indeed does start. It's going to be really interesting though to see the starting 11 because Eddie Howe's taking this competition seriously. He's also had to turn to his bench a couple of times in this competition already. Birmingham being an example of who really pushed Newcastle, and he had to bring off the likes of I think Sandro Tonali came off the bench in the end and try to turn the game in Newcastle's favour, and thankfully did do in the end. But hasn't gone all their own way up to this stage. But with the cup final only 2 weeks away as well, we'll maybe looking at Eddie Howe trying to condition his players, trying to protect his players without sacrificing the progress in the cup and also in the league as well. We're going to have to talk about Minter. I wish we were talking about him in a negative light and that had all gone horribly wrong. But he is a man who is looking right at home over on your right flank. He just looks like a brilliant Premier League player.
He really does. And I think I remember when I last spoke to you guys about Minter, he's got a lot of raw talent in him, and there's been plenty of mistakes that he's done, but I think that's just natural for someone who's an up and coming teenager, who's defined as a wonder kid on Football Manager, and just someone that's just rated so highly. We've paid a very large sum of money for, so he's definitely living up to the mark at the moment. He's really finding his feet, which is fantastic. I remember when he was against Leicester City, he had these fantastic moments in the game where he could take on the players and he could get the goals, which is fantastic. But then he repeats himself a bit. And I think the main player that really you have to give credit to for Minter really maturing quickly is Danny Welbeck. Whenever you see those two link up, Welbeck's pointing out the tiny mistakes that you make, and those are the difference between you being a very, very good Championship, lower Premier League footballer to being a superb Premier League footballer. And talking about the top 10, like you see now with how the Premier League is, in the gap between the newly promoted sides from the Championship to where everyone else is now, it's that gap is widening, and I think a lot of the players realise this, and they've really got to step up the mark as well to maintain that status. Minter has been fantastic on the wing. It's been a bit frustrating for a lot of Brighton fans, but I think that's from their perspective been a bit tad unrealistic as well, like expecting them to hit the ground running. We've got new manager in place, new philosophies in place, so the whole team is trying to gel into that and buy into it really quickly, and for the senior key players to understand it quicker so that they can pass it down to all the other players like Minter. And I think that's why there's been so many mistakes in the past, and why we've had a little bit of a calamity performance, Forest fresh in our minds. But all of a sudden, it just seems to have clicked. And, there's a really good story in The Athletic where they talked about how Herzog got the Forest tactics, and he just threw it in the bin and lit it on fire, and just saying, right, we're starting again. And now we're on this winning run, which is fantastic. But Minter has definitely been a player that has really stepped up for us, and it's fantastic to see. And now we're finally, I like to say, we're reaping the rewards at the moment, but I don't want to say that too quickly, because whenever I seem to be praising players like crazy, they end up having long spells in the treatment room, which is very frustrating on our end.
Yeah, I can imagine. And look, I am happy to see it's worked out for him, of course, and I just hope it doesn't work out for him on Sunday. Another man who moved to Brighton for a big fee was Jorginho Rutter. He seems to have found his feet in the FA Cup, 4 goals and 2 assists this season in the competition. So it seems to be his kind of competition. what's he been like this season? And is that someone we have to watch out for on Sunday?
Do you know what I think? I think Jorginho's become a cult hero, a fan favorite. He's come in and he gets it straight away. He just seems to get what the fans are about. He's that kind of player that has that solid connection with the fan base onto the pitch, and he's running around fighting for the badge rather than the name on the back. And I think that's why a lot of people love him. And it's difficult to really point out what he is really, because I see him play out wide, but he doesn't really have the pace. I see him playing number 10, but he doesn't really have the flamboyance of a typical number 10. But no matter what he does, he's always in the right position at the right time. His awareness is brilliant. His passing's top notch. I think he creates those chances, and wherever we seem to be changing it, the focal point always seems to be Jorginho in the attack, where the passing goes to Jorginho, and Jorginho finds that final pass in the final third, or he takes that chance in the final third. So he's definitely, I would say, someone that hasn't really been highlighted massively by the pundits outside of our circle as someone who is a main threat in our books. And I think that's quite surprising to say. I think that's just a case of just because he kind of like hides in the mist. He does all the tough battles, and he, like I say, gets himself in those right positions. He's a bit of he can sometimes play a little bit ugly. It's not pretty to see sometimes, but he gets what needs to be done. And then when he goes and gets in those positions and those attacking chances, he's there and he just reaps it. Absolutely. So I definitely think he's someone like, when you think about it, I think we spent 40 million on him from Leeds, and he had an okay season at Leeds. I wouldn't say he was justifiably 40 million pounds worth, but since seeing that happen, you see him play week in, week out, you can really understand why we've bought him. And once again, I find myself biting the bullet, because you just don't question Tony Bloom at this point. You just don't. You just trust the process, and then, we'll reap the rewards together.
Which is certainly doing at the moment. In terms of how Brighton will play on Sunday, what are we expecting from them?
I would like to say it'll be largely an unchanged side, really. I think very much the squad that we played against Bournemouth, and then we'll change it around. Don't think Pedro will start. I think we'll see Welbeck up top. Matoma and Minter will be starting along with Ruta to complete the front four. In the midfield, it will be Belieber and either O'Reilly or Jack Hinshelwood for me. Hinshelwood has been fantastic as a makeshift fullback, but his primary position is centre mid, and whenever he plays there, he's brilliant and he works really well with Belieber. I think Hinshelwood will be in that position, just because I think we're away from home. We need to really control the midfield. He's not someone that's attacking minded like O'Reilly. So I do think that O'Reilly will actually be on the bench now that I've said this out loud. And I think Belieber's the one that's going to be controlling the pace, setting the tone, and just trying to frustrate, the likes of Bruno and maybe Joe Linton in the middle, just stopping those passes, cutting through the midfield and the defensive walls. I think at the back, I think will be unchanged. Lamptey and Estupiñán completing the fullback roles, Verbruggen in goal, and then Van Hecke and Adam Webster, who I have to say must have probably one of the best redemption arcs in the history of the Premier League. For someone who I think in the summer many would expect to be shown out the door first time round, it didn't really seem to suit him under De Zerbi, and he just never really found his footing. But under Hertzler, he's shown once again that he is worthy of being a Premier League footballer, and someone that's worthy of being able to say, no, I can justify the big transfer fee that they paid for Bristol City. And he's a local lad as well, so I think he really gets it more than anyone else, I like to say, like Dunkey. But he's coming as captain, and he's really matured very quickly under Hertzler, and it'd be fantastic to see him just going out there again and just playing as well as he has been so far in recent weeks. And I mean, I deserve a slice of humble pie on that as well, because I was one of those people that thought, yeah, Webster's out for first one out in the summer, but no, they believe him, they trust him, and he's been fantastic from day one. So I think that'll be the lineup for us, largely unchanged. But I think the main one will be Belieber, no, not Belieber, Welbeck in, and Joao Pedro out.
And will it be a case of Brighton, just as you say, frustrating Newcastle and trying to hit them on the counter?
Yeah, I think we're going to largely see the same kind of tactics as what we'll see against Bournemouth. Again, Bournemouth have been a team that's been superb as well. One of those, dare I say, overachievers, similar way to Forest have been. Arola's set them up so brilliantly with a lethal front three in Kluivert, Semenyo, and Evan Nilsson. And we seem to really frustrate that. We allowed them to play their game, and then when we needed to frustrate them, we did. Belieber's a big part of that, and I like to say you'll probably see that. I probably jinxed it now as well, but watching Belieber play, dare I say, he's an upgrade to Caicedo almost, in the fact that he's someone that just wins the ball, passes it out wide, and just lets the momentum build that way. He never really gets involved pushing up in attack. He's almost been like an anchor in the midfield. And again, he's also a key reason why we got absolutely spanked by Forest 7-0 at the City ground. He wasn't playing. He was carrying a little bit of an injury, so we didn't want to risk him. Hinchell was our only recognised midfielder in that game, and we just got torn apart because, you know, the way Forest playing with that midfield, it's risky business just having one midfielder in there. But, you know, Morgan Gibbs-White just absolutely bullied us. And I think if we play that similar tactic, you know, we've got Bruno who's going to bully us in that case. So we need to have our own bully in there as well. We don't have someone like Joel Veltman, sadly, who I love. He's someone that, you know, dare I say, he's the master of the dark arts, really. You know, we always hear about, you know, that lot over in North London in Arsenal and how Mikel Arteta is very good at that. But I think Joel Veltman's the king of it all. He really is the master of it. And you really need that in the FA Cup. You need that little bit of ugliness and that game management. And that's where we're going to be lacking. So it's going to be even harder for us without players like that on the pitch. So it'd be interesting to see what the youngsters will do. The likes of Belieber and Hinchelwood in the middle of the park, very, very young midfield partnership. But, you know, when you see them play, it's like as if they've played for 5-10 years in the Premier League.
And how can Newcastle United get at Brighton? What's the biggest weakness that they're going to look to take advantage of, do you think?
I would probably say our fullbacks at the moment. Stupinan's been coming in and out of injuries, and Lamptey's been caught out a couple of times. And they like to push up. They like to play. We like to play a back four, but equally our fullbacks are more or less wing backs, really. They go out and support Miss Homer and Mintle on the wings, respectively. So I think, which is why I'm quite concerned about Gordon, because if Gordon sees Lamptey out there in the final third, he's there thinking, right, I'm taking over this space because someone's going to boot it my way, and I've got Van Hecker and Adam Webster in front of me, and that's just easy pickings for him, I think. I mean, I love Van Hecker, but I do think that if he can utilise his pace and just, you know, twist their ankles a couple of times, then we're going to be struggling. And the way to do that is to utilise Lamptey and Stupin and inviting them to push themselves up to support their wingers, clear the ball out and hit us on the counter. I think that's really where our main weakness is going to be, sadly, as much as I love those two and I rate them highly. But watching the Bournemouth game over again this morning, I could see that that's going to be our main weakness, really, in the FA Cup. And with what you guys have at your disposal on the wings, I'll be very surprised if the lads over at Brighton aren't thinking about that as well.
Well, there you go. One hopefully fairly how to take advantage of. Tom, how's it going to go then on Sunday? What's the score going to be?
I've got to go. I've got to go with Brighton. I'm really, as much as I like to, you know, sit on the fence and all these things. I really like the idea of us going for another cut run, and that really excites me. So I think I'm going to go for. I think we're going to do a repeat of what we did with Bournemouth, and I think it's going to be 2-1 Brighton.
Well, there we go. Hopefully, Tom's prediction is incorrect, but we'll wait and see how it all pans out on Sunday. Thank you to Tom for returning to the podcast and providing the insight into Brighton ahead of that FA Cup clash Sunday afternoon. Please remember to hit the thumbs up, hit subscribe, get into the comments as well. I'll get back to each and every single one of you. Please leave us a rating and review. And remember to get your NordVPN plan by hitting the link in the podcast description box. 30-day money back guarantee. Protect yourselves and support the podcast. Thank you as always, and enjoy the game.